about 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Katie Greifeld and Scarlet Fu, she's in for Romaine Bosick, here to help take us through the closing bell. It's a global simulcast. We're joined now by Tim Stenovec.
What did you guys do with Romaine?
I don't know where he is. We asked him where he was going. He did not get an answer. Carol Massar isn't here either.
Maybe they went on vacation without us.
That's
so
sweet.
We don't need to know. We're happy to be here in their stead. I will try not to embarrass the company here as we do our stellar simulcast.
Well, I like to imagine they're both watching fondly right now. And let's talk a little bit about today, Tim, because it looks like we're going to finish in the green on this Friday. We're looking at gains of about 5% for the month of May.
Yeah, it's just wild to look back at the last 9 weeks on the S&P 500. I'm going to go through some of these as my gainers later, but the numbers that we're seeing in today's trade are kind of mind-boggling. I mean, we'll leave Dell out of the conversation, but double-digit gains for NetApp, ServiceNow, IBM, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Workday, Supermicro, Robinhood, and Oracle. You know, 10 stocks in the S&P 500 up more than 10% today. It's crazy.
I mean, I'm looking at the fact that we have these headlines crossing the terminal. The president has left a meeting with his top officials. 2 hours, no deal, and still the markets are green. You know, the markets are still bullish on some sort of a deal happening despite all evidence to the contrary. So that's what I'm tracking. Yet again, another day here on a Friday.
All they need to hear is there's some kind of AI connection, and that brings me to Ford. Ford is up for a 9th straight day. No, 8th straight day, but at this point, who's counting? The stock up another 5%. It's the next AI play, Katie.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see that AI sort of wrecking ball roll around the markets, and these different names certainly has shined upon Ford. Let's talk about where we're going to close out on this Friday, the final trading day of May. The S&P 500 looks like we're going to finish about 0.2% higher, just shy of 7,600 on the S&P 500. The Nasdaq higher by about 0.2% as well. The Dow Jones leading the charge here, but again, it's price weighted, so who knows? You take a look at the little guys. The Russell 2000 actually sitting this rally out, declining a little bit on the day, but overall, another positive day on Wall Street, Tim.
Even though the S&P 500 was higher and there were some notable names and some big names that moved higher, again, market cap weighted index. So this is the one we look at, Scarlet. You had only 200 stocks roughly move higher in the S&P today, about 300 move lower. So you had more decliners than gainers, even though it was in the green.
And I love that you brought that up because you set up the IMAP perfectly. When you look at these S&P 500 split into 11 industry groups, there's only 2 sectors that finished in the green. Tech, which is, of course, the biggest weight in the S&P 500, up almost 2%. Financials up 0.5%. Everything else, 9 sectors, including the smallest ones, all finishing in the red. For the month, it's a similar story. Only 3 sectors finishing in the green, with tech up 16% for the month of May, and that has lifted the S&P 500 to a 5.2% advance for the month.
Oh, and Scarlett, you set me up perfectly for my tech-focused gainers
it's like we
today.
planned this.
All right, you two.
All right, look at this. Well, you know, we do host a show together on Tuesdays at noon that
What's that
everybody
called?
should tune into. It's called Bloomberg Crypto.
Oh.
Dell Technologies shares. Can you believe this today, guys?
I literally cannot.
33% to the upside. The stock is up more than 200% this year. We know the story by now. Shares surged after the company gave an outlook for annual sales that far surpassed analyst estimates. The demand for servers that power AI revenue in the fiscal year ending January of 2027 will be about $167 billion, including $60 billion from the sale of AI servers. That tops analysts' average estimate of $142.1 billion. I also wanted to take a look at what shares of Micron did today. They rose in the session up more than 5%. This after Susquehanna raised its price target to a street high view of $1,750. That was from $600. It's at $971 right now. So we were all talking about the view of UBS earlier this week, and that helped propel Micron to a $1 trillion market cap. Well, this takes out what had been that street high from earlier this week. That was on Tuesday,
Amazing.
I believe. And shares of Micron up more than 5%. Also, another gainer in the S&P 500. This one, I believe, is the second best performer. NetApp. This rallied today, 22.4%. The data storage provider reported its latest earnings. Analysts said the report is a strong print from the company, showing strong growth with upgrades to consensus expected.
And I have great news, actually. We're going to be speaking to the CEO on the close at about 4:20 p.m. today. So
funny how that works. I just set you up perfectly for that.
Incredible. Again, like we planned this.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We're so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Christina, this is where you take away the cringe.
I feel so left
the
out.
three of us.
All right, I'm Debbie Downer today. My job is decliners, and I want to start with one that was unexpected, and that's Costco. You know, it's down. It's at about 4% now. It was as much as 5% earlier today. The company reported actually higher than expected earnings, but it wasn't enough apparently to impress investors. But hey, those investors could end up happy anyway soon because there's rumors of a potential special dividend coming in the coming months. So that, of course, could spark a rally of those Costco stocks. So stand by and have faith, Tim, in that $1.50 hot dog.
I'm all about the peanut butter pretzels at Costco.
Of
but
course
I
you are.
digress.
Ooh.
All right. The other one I'm looking at is Eli Lilly has had a bit of a ride today. It's down as much as 2% at one point. This comes after this back and forth with CVS. You know, the drug giant and prescription plan giant provider was going to restrict access to Lilly's obesity shot Zepbound. But Lilly agreed to cut the prices it charges many of those health plans under the CVS umbrella. And that decision by CVS was reversed. And again, still uncertainty. That combined with uncertainty over the Trump administration's import drug policy seems to be putting the stock a bit on a back foot. It's especially problematic in light of this most favored nation status. It could complicate Eli Lilly's ability to do drug rollouts in places like Japan and elsewhere. And then finally, we are falling into the gap. We are back to the gap, Tim. We've talked about the gap already today. Really down as much as 17% earlier today on a weak sales outlook. Parts of that portfolio have been struggling for a while, but until now, Old Navy had kind of been the light that was carrying the rest of that portfolio. Old Navy reported a bad earnings, and so you saw that stock kind of tumble despite the fact that some of the other sectors, including Gap, were doing a bit better during this reporting sector. So I don't know if you guys are wearing Old Navy or Gap or Athleta.
No.
But,
I mean, the Gap I thought would do pretty well because of that collaboration with celebrity designers, including Victoria Beckham, which apparently sold out and did really well.
Agreed. There was something I wanted for a couple different drops, and they were all done. So I was like, oh, Gap will be doing great. But ironically, yeah, Old Navy apparently lagging and pulling the rest of it down.
Yeah, pretty interesting there. I also really like Athleta, but I feel like I might be alone in that because athleisure isn't hot anymore. But anyway, terrible day for Gap. Let's talk a little bit about what happened in fixed income land in the Treasury market. Very quiet overall. As you can see, we're talking about very, very slight declines when it comes to the yield picture. When it comes to 30-year yields, maybe moving up a hair. But I think I'm going to go ahead and call that unchanged, Tim.
All right. Well, not unchanged is the wealth of some of the founders, or I should say the founders of Anthropic, because that latest funding round has now given Dario and Daniela Amade, the founders, co-founders of this company, they own less than 1% of Anthropic. They're now worth $8 billion. So now this latest funding round, they're worth $8 billion each, has added the company's 7 founders to the ranks of the world's 500 richest people. It's the most from one company to be added in a single day in a Bloomberg Billionaires Index history. They all own less than 1% of the company, but now this round of funding that we've been talking about all day, they raised $65 billion at a valuation of close to $1 trillion. You now got all those founders as part of the Bloomberg Billionaires Index.
I feel like we should point out that Dario and Daniela are siblings, which is amazing. And
Their parents must be so proud.
I was going to say, do you think
I
my
didn't
I'm going
parents
to have
are
a
proud?
long talk with my brother and how he has failed me in my evaluation and elevation to the billionaires list.
I didn't think you were going to go there, Katie. I thought you were going to go to Jack Clark.
No,
Do you know that he was a former technology reporter for Bloomberg News?
I didn't know that.
And now he's a billionaire, founder
Nice.
of Anthropic.
There's hope for all of us on this simulcast.
Those people who work for Anthropic and are getting equity, they're all going to come out of this doing pretty well. So
Yeah, they're going to be fine.
That's why
All right, what do you
it's
guys got?
much pursued job. All right, in terms of the story we have, it's kind of tied to this, which is Anthropic and all the other large language models are making the traditional rite of passage for college students to get internships very difficult because a lot of the businesses, small businesses in particular, that used to bring on interns to learn the tricks of the trade are no longer doing that. They're basically relying on AI instead to perform the tasks that they used to hand off to interns. So now the few places that do offer internships, it's incredibly competitive. So Katie, I know your child hasn't been born yet, but you better start signing her up for internships.
You know, the way I'm thinking about it, I just hope by the time that, you know, I've produced this child and she turns 18 or something, that the higher education landscape, we're going to figure it out. We're going to sort through all of this AI turnover and existential dread, and maybe everything will be fine. Tim, how do
Carly,
you
did
feel?
you not think Katie had enough stress in her life right now? We want to add that on top of everything else she's been thinking about.
I shouldn't have said that, but as a mother, that's where your mind goes.
Yeah, no, it is pretty, I don't know, dire, and it does fit into this broader conversation we've been having about, what is the impact of AI going to be in the workforce, whether or not you're going to see sort of a hollowing out, and what the pipeline for some of those higher ranking roles looks like if you do have AI replacing a lot of these entry-level jobs.
I expect a full report on Monday after this weekend, and we can all spend the weekend thinking about it and figuring it out.